No, no buzz. A Just Bees book club. We're back on the Stephen King shit, which means I have to give my always endorsement slash get the fuck away from here. Um, Go listen to Range Touch. Range Touch, podcast network. Range Touch are the people who do the show Just King Things, where they read the works of Stephen King in publication order. Um, I'm also doing that, but much more slowly and much less interestingly. So go there, go there, go there, goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. I read Firestarter. This is the next book after the Dead Zone, which was very good. This is much more of a long walk to me, um, by which I mean I have very little to say about it. I think this is better than the long walk. There are some of the things that I've noticed from King that are things I enjoy. But largely speaking, it was a fun ride with some absolute bullshit in it that you know I enjoyed well enough, page by page, as it were. Um, King's facilities as a storyteller here are in effect. I was gonna say full effect, but that's an absolute lie. But they're in effect. It opens in a very compelling way. This dad and his daughter are on the run. They've been walking for a full day basically, and she's so tired. And he, through a series of coincidences, makes it out. There's a green car chasing them, but he gets the right cab at the right time. And then you learn that the dad can push people. He's a sort of latent psychic ability, not latent psychic ability. He has a sort of like uh, telekinetic Jedi mind trick thing where he can sort of implant ideas in people's heads by doing a mixture of saying a thing to the people that he's talking to and also thinking real hard, um, which causes him brain hemorrhages or whatever. Uh, he is Andy McGee. He was part of an LSD experiment in the 60s, basically, that gave him this power, that unlocked this power. He got married to another person in the experiment, Vicky, who gets extremely fridged. And they have a daughter named Andy, and sort of the bulk of the text of this novel is the attempt at escape from the shop, capital S shop, which is basically like the CIA and the FBI kind of all mixed together. I would say the Department of Homeland Security, but that's a more recent invention than this book from 70. Is this 1970? Jesus Christ, 70. It's 1980. Still longer ago than the Department of Homeland Security, as far as I remember. Maybe they're around, but ICE doesn't show up until 30 years later ish. Anyway, it's 22 years later, 25 years later, whatever. Hey, abolish ICE. Abolish abolish the Department of Homeland Security. Abolish the U.S. government. There's some anti-government sentiment in here. The reason I was holding this up, Spine First, is I'm very proud of the fact that I read this whole book, this whole weirdly tall mass market paperback, as many King books come in. Not a fucking crack on the spine. Very very careful with my books sometimes. They're running away from the shop, Andy and Charlie McGee, and the sort of the bulk of the text is them running away, them getting caught, them flashing back to the last time Charlie got caught, them flashing back to the LSD experiments, um, not them, Andy specifically, and then um, Charlie getting away, and Andy. Do you know what I'm about to say? He dies. That's the end of this book. It's not the end of the book. The end of the book is way more boring. Um, it's a really really competent Stephen King book. I think in many ways there are some interesting things in here. There are some really fucking gross things in here. And I mean that both in terms of do I mean that in both terms of I don't think there are many like really gross Stephen King things in terms of like him describing some really fucked up shit. I think I mean it more just in terms of like him, um, yeah, him like essentializing folks of color, specifically Native Americans, and uh, and Asians. Weirdly, I think it's mostly it's mostly like just Stephen King writing about people who aren't fucking Mainers or whatever, white Mainers. Um, I don't know. I genuinely, like, those things aside, had a very good time with big chunks of this book. Just being like, hey, I am enjoying reading this. Not like a I am casting judgment on how he. No, sorry, not casting judgment. That has nothing to do with what I'm saying. Not in terms of like there were interesting things happening. Is a better way to say that. Just like in terms of it's the things that happen follow from one another in such a way that I'm not compelled to keep turning the page because I never was, but like I'm always interested in them. I was like, oh yeah, the words flow together nicely. And then there's enough story beats, and then there's the ending, which is like among the corniest things I've read in a very long time. When Charlie, the young girl who was born of Andy and Vicky after their unlocking of their latent psychic abilities, she blows up the facility or whatever, and then decides to go back and hang out with like Irv and Norma, this couple that like sort of hung out with Andy and Charlie very early on in the book. She like walks her whole way back there after being abducted by the shop, and blowing it up, and like overhears a conversation where like she sort of learns that her dad's like ultimate goal was to get them out and then get a sort of a national news story going so that they might be, they wouldn't they wouldn't necessarily be able to live a normal life given that they have these telekinetic, pyrokinetic abilities, but they would be able to at least sort of set the terms of their own imprisonment, basically. And she learns this through listening to Irv and Norma talking about like what to do, like because they are going to go and tell a newspaper or something that is going to get this out, to get the word out, because she's always already in prison, as a as a true parody of Derrida and Foucault would go. And then she learns these sort of central tenets of what the kind of paper that would need to be accessed, to guarantee that the story gets out. And then there's a whole fucking sequence where like the shop like comes up and is finding Irvin Norma's farm, and they're like, oh no, they're back here, but there's already a note on the table of Charlie saying, I know what I must do, however it's phrased, and then because she's gone, and there's a scene where she goes to a library, and she says like, my daddy always told me if you ever had a really hard question that you didn't know the answer to, you should go to the library because they know and they'll help you. And hey, Libraries are cool. Um, but this is an extremely corny scene, and she lays out the sort of premises that she's looking for in terms of like a newspaper that will allow her story to get out without it being shut down by the government. Which is like it needs to be something like nationally distributed. It needs to have credibility, basically, and it needs to have no ties to the government. And then the scene sort of like cuts away very coyly when um, when the librarian answers. And the next scene is her like on an elevator, and it's very uh, caught up in um, like why people aren't worried about her being there, because again, not again, this is the first time I've said this. Charlie is like 10 at this point. She's like 7 at the beginning of the novel. I guess maybe 9 at the end. And she's like, it's New York, baby. It's New York in 1980, I guess. So everyone is like noticing that there's a little girl wandering around this fucking skyscraper, in the same way that early on there was a bunch of people noticing that there was a little girl wandering around in the airport when she like went to go use her other psychic ability to knock over a bunch of payphones, then accidentally set a misogynist's shoes on fire. But yeah, there's a resonance there, I guess. But everyone sort of like, you get the interiority of people noticing that she's like a young girl who's on an elevator in a skyscraper alone, but like she seems like she has such purpose. So I guess she must need to be here. And there's a fucking like big reveal at the end. It's a huge reveal. It's huge. This is huge. She steps out of the elevator and she walks with purpose up to the desk. And she sees the tagline of a newspaper or magazine, which I guess maybe at the time people would have immediately recognized, and so this next bit would have come as less of a like big reveal or whatever. But she starts talking to the receptionist, and she asks, like, can I talk to a reporter to like sort of unveil this big story of the fact that I'm a 9-year-old who has this incredible pyrokinetic ability that can not just like light people's shoes on fire like she does in the airport early on. It can't just like burn down a whole fucking like 2-building plantation farm, which is what the shop is set on, and then only be quenched by like literally vaporizing a duck pond at the end. But like theoretically, according to the doctor who did the experiments on her father, it might be associated with the pituitary gland that only really comes out in adolescence. So like she might be on the verge of like having this power that could, and this is in the text, not just set off a nuclear bomb at her will, but literally cleave the earth in twain. Could fucking split the globe like an avocado that's been sliced through, and just open it up so the core is in one side or the other. These are all the things that have been promised of her power, she says, to the fucking. She doesn't say all of this to the clerk. This is all in mostly in the ravings of Dr. Wanless and the brain of Cap and John Rainbird. She says, I have something to tell you to this receptionist, or she has something I need to report to a reporter, to the receptionist. And she's carrying like a fucking Safeway bag full of quarters because she's again knocked over a bunch of payphones, and like a little bag of kindling. And the idea is she's gonna, tell her story and then prove her story by being able to just like light a small fire with her brain. And all of the implications thereof will obviously become immediately apparent to this writer. The big reveal is that she's at the offices of Rolling Stone magazine. It's fun. It's a fun book. Anyway, thanks for not watching.